I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Columbus Municipal School Board. We have a quorum present tonight. We go into our invocation offered by Mr. Frederick Sparks, followed by the pledge.
Let us bow. Dear Heavenly Father, we come first of all, Lord God, just to say thank you for another day. We pray and ask, Father, now that you would just be with us all as we go into this meeting. We pray that those things that are discussed on this evening, whatever the outcome is, will be those things that will be to uplift you and you alone. We pray that you will get all the glory and the praise. We ask these and many other blessings in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please rise with me. Attention, salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let me start by welcoming everyone here tonight. Thank you for being here. Also, before we get into our agenda, we have our new board member, Ms. Vaughn Cox, is here with us. Welcome. And so, board, before us we have tonight's agenda. So I need a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Sparks. Do I have a second? Has been seconded by Ms. Cox. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go into closed determination for executive session. I need a motion for closed determination.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Sparks. All in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. We'll be out shortly to make the announcement. All right, welcome back, everyone. We did have one item that we took up in executive session. It was a student matter. Dr. Shoemake made the motion. I made the second. It was a 4-0 vote regarding the student matter that had to be taken up. And just for clarification for future, if we have a student matter that comes before this board, we always take it up at the front, just in the, because parents and students need to get home and different things. So thank you so much for working with us on that matter. Next, we go to our next item on tonight's agenda, which is item number 7, school board minutes and information. Board, before us, we have item 7A, which is to approve the school board minutes for February 7th, February the 12th, and February the 23rd. And if we could, we'll take those all as one motion. So, board, I need a motion to approve the minutes. Has been motioned by Ms. Cox. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Sparks made the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to item 7B, which is trustee travel and discussion. I know we did have a couple of trustees, Mr. Sparks and Dr. Shoemake, that went to MSBA conference. So if you'd like to share with us in the public.
Thank you. Mr. Sparks and I attended the 46th annual conference, which ran from February 19th, 20th, and 21st. What I would like to do is just sort of highlight some of the sessions that we went to, or at least I went to, because Mr. Sparks and I split up. On the first day, I know this sounds boring, but it's sort of important, we had a really good session on parliamentary procedure. And if you've been to these meetings before, you know how important parliamentary procedure is. So this was a good, helpful reminder of what important motions are and the importance of keeping the meetings running smoothly and also keeping discussion fair and just and balanced. The next day, on the 20th, I went to a very interesting session on booster clubs. And this was a best practice from Monroe County and also from Pearl River County. And they went over positives about booster clubs and then some of the pitfalls. I've gotten the PowerPoint, which I'll be glad to share with you, Mr. Shannon, and also from Earl Burke, who's the CFO of Hinds County. I got their policy on booster clubs. I know a couple of years ago we took a run at looking at our booster club policy, so it might be helpful, but I'll be glad to share that with you. I also went to a session on literacy across the curriculum, and this was presented by Rankin County. Very interesting. They use Lexile I think we use AR to grade how our literacy is. It's slightly different, but on average, according to the information they had, students in the Lexile, the average high school student scores 1,000, which sounds great until you realize that that's 7th grade level. So it's not all just STEM. I'm a former English teacher, so this was music to my ears, the necessity of really trying to read and emphasize literacy, not just for the 3rd grade reading gate, but throughout the student's career. Just to give you an idea, one of the examples that they gave was if you're taking the ACT, which is sort of important, and the English section, you have 75 questions and 45 minutes to answer those 75 questions. So that's about 40 seconds to read, comprehend, and answer a question. And if you're reading at a 7th grade level, when you're a senior in high school, that's not good news. So those are 2 sessions that I really found quite useful, and thank all you taxpayers out there for, helping us send people down to these sessions, because they are very, very useful. Thank you.
I attended 2 sessions as well, one of which is the responsible use of social media and other hot topics. Mr. James Keith was the facilitator, and one of the topics of discussion was the use and the things that we should and shouldn't do when using social media, how some people have gotten in trouble with some of the comments and statements that they've used on social media. And they reminded everyone that once you put anything out on social media, you cannot get it back. So before you put anything out, you need to proof it, or maybe have someone else to proof it for you. Also, I attended the best practices of the Baldwin School District, and the gist of that was the superintendent kind of harked on something that caught my attention that I haven't heard much about since I've been on this board. He was boasting in the beginning about the campus, the beautification of the campus. He harked on the maintenance department and the custodians and things of that nature, how important and what an integral part they play in the school system, in their district. So it caused me to, ponder, about our district and just kind of pay attention to things that we have going on here as well. And so far, from what I found, on my own, of course, everything seems to be up to par and looks well. But I would like to get with Mr. Shannon and maybe get some more information about the custodians and maintenance and things like that. But as Dr. Shoemaker said, it was very informative, and I do appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board members, y'all have any other questions or anything about it? I appreciate your attending, and just any information you'd like to share with or direct us to, because I wasn't able to attend the meetings as well, and Ms. Cox, then I know there's resources out there, so just the topics, titles, and everything. Thank you. Next, we go to our next item on tonight's agenda, which is item 7C, which is the discussion and time frame of the agenda items to be available for review. Mr. Shannon, I'll turn this over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Spears, other members of the board. It is very important to us and our administration to make sure that the board has all of the information they need to make the best decisions possible. And as you know, in our district, we're fortunate enough to have review meetings when time will allow. Those are held on Wednesdays, the Wednesdays before the regular board meeting, and we want to make sure that we're providing you guys with the information so you have time to review and ask questions. And sometimes there are things that are not there for whatever reason, but we want to make sure that we're clear on the expectations and the things that we can have available for you. And a discussion that we had with our team is that the board had given permission for some departments to turn in things after the review meeting. We're trying to push to get as many things as we can to you guys ahead of time, and we just want some clarity on that to see if we can get you the information that you need.
Sure. And, to that point, I think it's, good, because I know there's some cutoffs and different things that with, whether it be in the business office or other departments that just, aren't available at the time that we have a review meeting. And so I think in the board in the past, because sometimes if you look at next month, the first Wednesday and Monday, and second Monday, the way the meetings fall, then that just automatically kind of stacks up even more quickly for them to have all their reporting done by the end of the month and get things compiled. So I think we left, as I remember the board, kind of fluid and open-ended, but with the expectation that if something can be available and completed, that it is, for giving us more than the 72 hours that's in policy for us to have a chance to review and be able to ask questions. And I commend you and your team for this month, even though we didn't have a review meeting Wednesday, for sending to us kind of a follow-through of, okay, since we didn't have a review, here's some information that you need to know about these items and things. And I think that's a good process to work forward with in light of maybe some of the items that might not be available for us at the time. But certainly, I think, and I asked the board, I think it was the board's understanding that if we can have something at the time of the review, we want it, but we do understand there are certain things that just, we don't want them rushed and be incorrect to work with. So thank you very much, Mr. Shannon, for that. Now 7D is just my reminder to us board members, and Ms. Cox, I'll get with you regarding this particular item. It's the submission of statement of economic interest to the to the Mississippi Ethics Commission. It's due on or before May the 1st of this year, and so it's just okay, perfect. So if you haven't had a chance to go through and complete it, if you have, then that's perfect. Then we're right where we need to be. Next is 7E. Which is going to be discussion and review of CMSD Campus Emergency Response Plan, district policies, and recent passage of HB 1083. And so, Mr. Shannon, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, President Spears, other members of the board. Just wanted to talk with all of our stakeholders about the emphasis that our district places on school safety. It is the wish of every parent to send their kid to school and have them return the same way, just a little bit smarter every day. It is a nightmare just watching the things that take place throughout our country and across our region at school sites and other different places. But want to share with you the things that we do have in place, and we continue to try to improve on those daily to keep our students, teachers, and everyone safe on all of our campuses, and stress the importance to our students of how important it is to make good decisions and not be influenced to do things that you think people don't pay attention to. Each year, it is a accountability measure for MDE for every school district in the state of Mississippi to have a crisis management plan approved for all of their sites and for the district. Our district principals constantly review those policies. We're also very fortunate to have one of our board members with that background and expertise that helps us each year in the summer to make sure we review those. Those are often approved. Those plans for each site in the district are approved in the summer, June and July, for the upcoming school year. Once those are approved, of course, they are reviewed and tweaked as new staff members come on board to update those plans. Once school starts, those staff members are trained when our 3 or 4 days that we have before school starts on all of the procedures and policies they must have in place for when students arrive. Students are also given information as to how they are supposed to react and I guess, behave during emergency drills throughout the year. That documentation is sent to our office here at Central Office, and we actually talk to principals and teachers and students to make sure that the information that we get on paper is actually being done inside the school buildings. All of our school buildings are locked with all outside entrances. All of the classrooms that we have doors that are locked during instruction. Every single teacher during class change, they're on duty. All of our teachers are in place for duty during student arrival and dismissal, and our peak times, our lunch times when students are and teachers are on duty inside the classroom. As we know, there has been an emphasis placed on school safety recently in our nation and even here in the Golden Triangle with some of the incidents that have been on Facebook and other media outlets. we have been very fortunate to have the support and partnership with the Columbus Police Department and our Mayor, Robert Smith. So we have been provided additional human support and resources with the Columbus Police Department. They have been able to place officers on our campus at every dismissal and every arrival of our students and doing periodic walkthroughs throughout the day. We did find it necessary to send a safety message out to all of our stakeholders and place that message on our website, just reminding parents to have those very serious conversations with their students about the consequences of making bad decisions and the importance of reporting things to the administrators or our SROs. We have a top-notch school resource officer team led by Chief Johnson, who just happens to be here tonight. We have 5 or 6 armed officers who are certified police officers. They're not security guards. They're certified police officers that can go out and work for the police department anywhere here in the state that we feel very protected. And we have 1 school safety officer that helps out at the high school. So we're pleased with that. And as you know, this is an ongoing process because when people plan to do harm to our students and to our teachers, we have to stay a step ahead of them and try to prevent things. So I did include the safety message and also the poster that advertises some training that is being sponsored by MDE at various locations that we will be sending representatives to. I also plan to have each month a district safety team that meets with a representative from each school site to discuss board meeting items and school safety items on how we can improve the safety awareness and aspects for each of our school sites and our district. The first meeting will be when we come back from spring break, and the following meetings will be after each board meeting, so I have the information to present from the board meetings to our team of parents. Our parents have been overwhelmingly supportive of the steps that we have taken to keep their children safe, but we know there's still work to do. We want to get better, and we'll continue to work on it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Shannon. Board, is there any questions or anything regarding this item for Mr. Shannon? Thank you very much for that. Next, Board, we will go to our agenda item, which is consent agenda 7A. We have our consideration to approve our policies, our current revised policies. We also have A2, which is consideration to rescind policies. Then we have B, which is 1 is academic dates to remember, 2 is athletic dates to remember, 3 is our upcoming board meetings on April the 4th and April the 9th, and then we also have field trips for students overnight from McKellar Technology to Jackson, Mississippi, the high school basketball team to win the state championship in Jackson, and then our upcoming, and then we have student transfer. So, Board, if we could take all these under consent agenda, I need a motion for approval. Has been motioned by Ms. Cox. Do I have a second? I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to our item number 9, which is open forum. We have one individual, Mr. Jim Wilson, that is here to speak with us tonight during open forum. So, Mr. Wilson, if you would come up, welcome.
Mr. President, trustees, Mr. Dunn, Mr. Shannon, good evening. I'm glad to be here. If I may approach, I have some copies of some documents for you guys, if that's all right. Yes, Mr. Dunn, I'm here to tonight. I've addressed the board a couple of times in the past about special education, and I pledged to keep you guys up to date on things related to special education, and I thought that tonight would be a good time to kind of bring you up to speed on some things. My goal has been and will remain to come here and report good news to you all, and I can do some of that tonight. I'm pleased to be able to do some of that tonight. So there have been some things that have happened that have been encouraging. But I do think it's important to make you aware of the Mississippi Department of Education's finding of on the systemic complaint that was filed, and that was filed on October the 17th, 2017. I'm familiar with the complaint because I wrote it, and I was one of the 23 citizens who signed it and joined Ms. Ford in that process. The results of that investigation and that complaint have now been issued, and that's what I gave you all, were the Mississippi Department of Education's findings. And I want to kind of go over them briefly. It's a lengthy document. It's 23 pages long. I think another goal that we have is someday, hopefully sooner rather than later, that we will look backwards for the purpose of seeing how far we have come. However, we have to kind of look backwards now to fix some things, and I'm optimistic that we're doing that. And so in order to fix some problems, we have to identify the problems, and the Mississippi Department of Education, through its investigative process, is helping us to do that. So the complaint was filed, and there are, at the time it was filed, there were 426 students in the district who were identified as eligible under IDEA for a review of educational records to make a systemic determination of the allegations in the complaint. The Department of Education, I guess probably because of the sheer volume of that, took a random selection of 15% of that number, which turned out to be 64 students that they examined. And during the investigatory process, 2 students left the district for whatever reason. So at the end of the day, the investigators looked at 62 students randomly selected. The complaint that was filed contained 5 pretty basic allegations, and they were that the district had a policy, practice, or procedure that denied students with disabilities timely evaluations and reevaluations, that the district had a policy, practice, or procedure that fails to ensure each child's IEP team is composed of qualified individuals who have knowledge regarding the child with a disability, that the CMSD has a policy, practice, or procedure that denies students with disabilities access to related services, that CMSD has a policy, practice, or procedure that denies students with disabilities access to the least restrictive environment and fail to ensure students with disabilities are educated with children who are non-disabled to the maximum extent appropriate. And finally, that CMSD has a policy, practice, or procedure that fails to provide adequate and sufficient special education services that would allow students with disabilities to progress socially, emotionally, behaviorally, and academically while attending the Columbus Municipal School District. So those were the allegations of the complaint. They were looked at, and with respect to the allegations, the Mississippi Department of Education Office of Special Education found that the district was non-compliant with respect to every allegation. And the document that I gave you goes into great detail about the non-compliance and the deficiencies, and I'm not going to go into all of that. It's not necessary. I would, however, encourage you to review that, and you can get a flavor for some of the problems. Some of them can be easily fixed. I mean, they really can. I think with appropriate training, appropriate leadership, and really education, I think that some of these things can be shored up. But I did want to kind of go over just a couple of these. With respect to the first allegation, there was a finding of noncompliance in that only 20 of the 62 students had initial or current eligibilities within the 1-year investigative timeline. 11 of those 20 students' educational records revealed significant discrepancies with evaluation documentation and timely evaluations and reevaluations. With respect to allegation number 2, finding of noncompliance, 1 of the 62 students for the 2017 and 18 IEP was not developed by the appropriate IEP committee members, and I think that was actually minor. The document wasn't signed. Allegation number 3, non-compliant in that the CMSD failed to provide related services and accurately document the frequency and duration of special education services to support the identified needs of 8 of 62 students. Allegation number 4 of non-compliance, CMSD failed to consider and document placement options in participation with non-disabled peers on the IEPs of 38 of 62 students. And then finally, and I think probably the most alarming one with respect to allegation number 5, a finding of non-compliance. CMSD failed to develop appropriate IEPs for 59 of 62 students. As I said, there were 426 students with who qualified as eligible under IDEA, and the finding that 59 of the 62 from the random sampling is suggestive that, you know, statistically that most of the 426 students would have an IEP that was not developed properly. And that is very alarming to me as the parent of a special needs child, because the IEP is our roadmap. We have to follow that. It has to have sustainable, meaningful goals. And so that's kind of what I was mentioning about some optimism. If we can get our IEP committees trained and educated on how to write appropriate IEPs so that attainable goals can be met, then we've got a chance to succeed. But as things are now, the findings unfortunately reveal that we have a pretty broken up system right now. Some of the examples, just a few. For 2 students, it was found that their 2015 and 16, 2016 to 17, and 2017 to 18 annual IEPs had identical FLAA FPSs for each of the identified school years, just taking the same IEP year after year after year. 21 students' IEPs failed to include a statement that addresses the specific needs of the students. And then it goes on and on with various examples like that. Then the MDE made some additional systemic findings on its own that were outside of the allegations set forth in the systemic complaint. And those primarily related to ESY, or extended school year services, and things that are going on with the MET and timelines associated with the MET team. And while there are a number of corrective actions that are required, as you'll see if you review that, those findings, mainly by May 11th of this year, the district shall review and revise all CMSD IDEA eligible students' IEPs to address areas of noncompliance cited. As evidence of these meetings, upon follow-up in May 2018, the MDE OSE will randomly select another 15% of the district's IDEA students' files, in addition to the 62 students that they examined in the course of this investigation. And then the district has 30 days to submit a corrective action plan. Now, with that, all of that being said, I also pursued a complaint individually, and I'm not going into the results of that other than to tell you all that when the department makes findings and there's a finding of noncompliance, then an IEP meeting has to occur to address the noncompliance. And we had that meeting in our case. I'm very pleased to report to you that Dr. Smith, who is here tonight, she handled that meeting. She was there. She was prepared. She was professional. She was courteous. She was educated. She came to us with compassion, and she came to us with ideas and solutions. And that's all we've ever wanted, is for someone to listen, to have respect, to understand the topics. And so I'm very encouraged that she did an excellent job, and that you all selected her to give her an opportunity in this position. Now, she's got some work to do from these findings, and I'm sure that she's going to take those on professionally and do the very best that she can. But I wanted to let you all know that I think that she's doing a good job, and that we have some hope now. And I also want to thank you all for your interest. I know you probably tire of me coming up here and talking about special education, but I made a pledge to my son and other children that have needs like him, that this is what I would do for him. And I try to do it. I try to do it as fiercely and as respectfully as I can, and I'm going to continue to do that. And I'll continue to try to keep you guys updated. I would encourage you all to keep special education in the front of your mind, because we have a lot of room to improve. I'm thankful for the changes that have been made. And as I said, I want to come here someday in the near future and report all positive things. And I think that that's possible. So thank you again for hearing me beyond my time, but these are important issues, and I wanted to bring you up to speed.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson, and I don't think anyone at this board would ever tire of you or any other parent coming and helping us be better than what we can see ourselves, where we're at. And certainly, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we do know that as we move forward, we're going to continue to keep this at the front of mind, just going all the way back to September when we had the special education meeting and trying to match up A's to A's and B's to B's, and now working with Mr. Shannon and his team and Ms. Lenore and Dr. Smith, whether it be resources, whether it be just discussion and ongoing dialogue, that's not going to stop anytime soon. So thank you, and continue to keep us informed, and thank you for all you do.
I will. Thank you. You guys have a good night.
Mr. Spears, real
Yes,
quick.
Mr. Shannon.
Mr. Wilson, just real quick, I do want to thank you for bringing this to the board's attention, but I do want to make you aware we did receive the same information on yesterday. We actually met this morning with Ms. Lenore, Dr. Smith, and the rest of our team members to discuss a plan on how we can move forward. Dr. Smith did meet with me right before the board meeting to inform me that she has reviewed the 23 pages that she received this morning, and we will be working with all of our stakeholders and parents to make sure we submit a plan. But I want to make it clear that being in compliance is just not our goal. Average organizations expect compliance every day. Great organizations expect excellence every day. We're going to do things well. We're going to make sure your kids have above and beyond what they need to be productive citizens. So we will become compliant, but our goal is to make sure we're excellent in everything that we do. So this will be the district of choice for those students and parents that have children with special needs, so they can receive the services they deserve. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you have that goal and that attitude. That'll serve us very well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You guys have a good evening.
You too. Thank you. Now, Board, next we move to our item 10, which is Office of Business Management. First, we have our financials to consider, monthly financial statement reports, fund balance, the cash balance, budget status report under A1, 10A1, then 10.2 is monthly revenue budget report. Then we have our monthly expenditure budget report, and then 10.4 is our certification and summary of reconciled bank statements. Board, I need a motion to approve our financials.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Dr. Shoemake. Do I have a second? Has been seconded by Ms. Cox. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to our monthly ad valorem tax collection. I believe, Mr. Shannon, we're running ahead, not $6 million ahead that was first put out there, but we're moving in the right direction, correct?
Yes, we did try to pull a fast one on old Eagle Eye Spears over here, but Mrs. Holmes, you want to comment on our collection?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Shannon. To Mr. Spears, Interim Superintendent, Mr. Shannon, Board of Trustees, I am pleased to announce that we are running ahead of our expected collections, about $200,000. We do anticipate another $1.2 million this month toward our tax collection. So if the trend continues, we do expect to exceed far better than what we requested for this tax year.
to the point to where it might actually have to be declared as, I'm not going to put you in that till we get close enough. All right. So next we go to our athletic events report. Board, is there any questions about the athletic events report? All right. Next we have consideration to approve fixed asset disposals. Board, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Dr. Schumake. Do I have a second? I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to 10.8, consideration to approve transfer of residual teacher incentive funds, Fund 2970 into District Maintenance of Fund 1120. Board, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Sparks. I'll make the second. Any discussion?
Yes. Could you just explain a little bit what the residual teacher incentive funds were?
Mr. Shannon?
Yes, sir. President Spears, other members of the board. A few years ago, our district had the privilege of working with a program out of MDE that paid our teachers an incentive for student achievement. We had two schools that participated in that endeavor, Cook Elementary and Franklin. That fund or grant has expired, and these are the leftover funds from that grant, and those have been sitting in an account that we are entitled to, and we want to transfer those funds to the district maintenance fund so that we can utilize those. I think it's about $580.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Shannon. Any other questions regarding the item? If there's no more questions, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to 10.9, which is discussion and consideration to approve Columbus Lounge Chamber of Commerce dues renewal. One thing that you'll notice on it is that the statement, I think, was from November of last year, which is why it's on here, and I think we've been participating in the chamber for many years before. So, Mr. Shannon, do you have any comments about the item?
No, as we move forward, we will communicate with our business office to make sure that we have a PO done at the beginning of each year, so when the bill or invoice does come in, we'll have a PO number to reference, and we will not have to bring this back before the board, but this money is in our budget.
Okay. All right, so board, I need a motion for approval. Has been motioned by Ms. Cox. Do I have a second? I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to 10.10, which is consideration to approve IDA Part B and preschool FY17 budget amendment. And I think this deals with carryover funds and different things. So board, I need a motion for approval. It's been motioned by Ms. Cox. I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Now we go to the claims docket. Board, I need a motion to pay the bills.
So moved.
It's been motioned by Dr. Schumake. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Mr. Sparks. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. All right, next we go to item 10C, which is CMSD budget presentation, and I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Shannon.
Thank you, President Spears and other members of the board. We would like to bring several topics before you at our review and board meetings to kind of keep you up to date as to where we are in our budget preparation for fiscal year 19. Mrs. Holmes has done a great job with meeting with all of our staff members and department heads to kind of get a head start as to where we need to be when we get ready for FY19. But she has prepared a long-term debt presentation that she would like to briefly discuss.
Thank you again, Mr. Shannon. Mr. Spears, members of the Board of Trustees, tonight, as Mr. Shannon has already mentioned, I would like to briefly highlight the long-term debt that we will be anticipating for our FY19 budget. Just to summarize from the beginning, CMSD will expect to expend more than $3.2 million for its debt obligations for FY19. First, we'll take a look briefly at the long-term tax levy debt. This is the tax that we impose on our taxpayers to help pay for some of the debt obligations that we have. With the general obligation bonds, you will see that there are 4 series that are referenced. You will take note that one series actually has matured. We did refinance or refund a portion of the general obligation bonds just this past year that we took advantage of some substantial savings to reduce the burden on not only on the district but on the taxpayers as well. We do have, and that particular financing source was for the CMS for Columbus Middle School for the construction of it. Next item you'll see is the $3 million note. This was the construction note for Stokes Beard, $6.5 million. We will owe a little over $420,000 for FY19 with principal and interest payments for that one. The QZAB was for the renovations at CHS. We do expect to expend $105,000 approximately for the QZAB bond, which is the Qualified Zone Academy bonds. Also, the QSCB was for elementary school additions. We do expect to expend a little over $60,000 in taxpayers' money to meet that obligation. So for FY19, we're looking at approximately $2.7 million of tax levied obligations that we must meet to meet our debt payments. Just to take a look at the debt schedule in a little bit more detail, you'll see that the district has structured its debt payments, and FY19 is no different from the other years, but you'll notice that we have structured our debt payments where we, according to our tax revenue streams, our tax collections are a little lower in the fall, so we have structured our debt to accommodate that reduction in tax revenues, and you'll see that it's more of the payments for principal and interest are on the back end of each school year. But for the first half of the fiscal year, we're expected to expend over nearly $260,000 in primarily for interest in this first half of the school year for FY19. You'll notice in the back half of the school year, we're expected to expend $2.4 million for principal and interest payments. Again, that's to take advantage of the higher revenue tax streams that we will see each year. Next is our Apple capital leases. We are entering in for FY19 the 4th year of our technology initiatives with one-to-one for our freshman academy. With the 4-year lease, it will be our last payment on the year 1 of the MacBooks will be maturing actually in FY19. We expected to spend nearly $122,000 for that final payment of year 1 of those MacBooks. With the anticipation of the board continuing with that program, you will notice that we have or do expect to budget for year 4 of those Apple MacBooks again. So we are expected to spend nearly $393,000 for MacBook capital leases that the district has incurred. Lastly, on our long-term debt is the master lease schedule payment. Of course, we know we just this past year entered into a lease agreement for 10 new buses, 9 regular buses, 1 sped. It's a 10-year note that's due to mature in 2027. You'll notice that our payment schedule reflects a payment of a little over $100,000 that we would need to expend to meet that obligation for those payments on those school buses. I am happy to report that there are no unforeseen circumstances that will prevent us from meeting our debt obligations for FY19. Again, the district does expect to expend $3.2 million, and we are prepared to meet that obligation.
That's good news. Board, do you have any questions regarding the presentation tonight? Couple questions I have as we go into the budgeting process and different things. We have dollars that are already in the fund balance, the debt service fund balances. So those dollars would not have to be requested at the time we make our request. But our plan is to make sure that we fully fund the debt levy, because I know that was a major part of the agreement that the groups that we work with on refunding our bonds, is that they would have to be fully funded every year. So that's where we start on that. The other question, this may be directed to Mr. Shannon. The master lease program, I know that as we go into the next year, there was a schedule given to the board regarding the replacement of buses. And with the buses, we purchased the 10. I think the provider, Echo Ride, provided, was it 5 buses? Then this year, the schedule for what we need to replace goes down, even though we have some. So we'll be able to entertain that in the budget as to how we're going to do that, or go back to negotiate with them as to whether they're going to put more in the fleet. Is that kind of what the board is to anticipate?
Yes, sir, the board should anticipate that, but I would like to go back and look at our agreed-upon purchasing schedule, because if my memory serves me correct, I think we've already purchased what we need for this past year and next year. But I will look at that information to make sure that it is correct, and bring that information back in April.
Okay. And I think one of the other topics, and I don't remember the exact details to it, I just remember the discussion had to do with when we were doing the master lease program, and of course when we were doing the refunding, there was a cap amount of debt that we could incur as a district for the rating that we received. And so certainly that should be part of the discussion to make sure that we don't exceed those caps and then violate the covenants that were agreed upon at that point. So, okay. Board, is there any other questions regarding the presentation tonight? Okay. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Shannon and Ms. Holmes. Thank you. Next, we go to our next item on tonight's agenda, which is the item 11, Office of the Interim Superintendent, Mr. Shannon. Board, we were provided the upcoming travel for Mr. Shannon for different events that he would be out of the district. And so, Board, you see those are uploaded each month, and Mr. Shannon has been very forthcoming about making sure to keep those up to date in our file. And Mr. Shannon, is there any travel or anything you want to report on?
Yes, sir. President Spears, other members of the board, would like to comment on some travel that I had late last night to Jackson, Mississippi, to watch a little basketball for Golden Triangle participants. The Columbus Falcons, led by senior Robert Woodard, did defeat the lowly Starkville Yellow Jackets in the semifinal game, and they will be participating on Saturday night at 8 p.m. For another state championship. Guys, it was a hard-fought battle on last night. We'll play Meridian on Saturday. It's a winnable game. Our guys will have to concentrate and play hard and listen to the coach, but very excited about the things that we're doing in basketball. But the thing that I like most about that team, as we review our discipline reports that we get and everything, those young men don't appear on that list. We've got some fine young men representing our school district, their families, and the Columbus community. So if you have a chance, please go out on Saturday and support the Falcons as we bring home another gold ball. Other things that we have had a chance to go and do is recruit teachers for this upcoming school year. Mr. Hunley has done an outstanding job of scheduling some recruitment opportunities at some very prestigious colleges around the state. You see the recruiting schedule: Alcorn State, Delta State, Mississippi State, Jackson State, University of Mississippi, and MSU in Meridian. Do notice that the Mississippi State visit on April 3rd is partnering with MUW, so we definitely don't want to leave those out. So those are some things that we're doing to try to get teachers, highly qualified, compassionate teachers in our district, so we will be prepared to move the needle as it relates to student achievement. We have also set a personal goal for our team to have all of our teachers in place by the I think it's the June 9th, June 10th agenda. So we're working very hard with our principals to get those requests in. So as you see future board agendas for personnel, we hope to have some teachers to fill the vacancies that we have. Did have a chance also to go down to Jackson and watch a group from McKellar participate in a competition, and we will have a group that did win the state competition. We'll be advancing to the nationals. I think it will be in Atlanta sometime this summer. So our students we have some outstanding students. I know a lot of times you guys hear some negative things, but keep in mind those represent about 5% of our students that make bad decisions. We've got 95% that make good decisions every day and that are representing our district well, but we'll try to increase that number to 100. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then also, I know it's on the agenda, the teacher recruitment advertisement, I think is something that you're working also in the area too, to, have teachers that may not necessarily be coming right out of the universities, but may also want to explore options in the district, if you want to speak to that too.
Yes, sir. This week I had a chance to talk to a very wise gentleman. I won't mention his name, but he did help us to partner with WCBI to come up with some online advertisement at a somewhat reduced rate that we're trying to get negotiated, that we'll bring that information back as soon as it's finalized. But we do want to do a media blitz with letting people know that Columbus is a great place to work, a great place to come. We've got a great team of leaders with our principals, have a very supportive school board, and we're ready to move forward on the things that we can do for our children in this district. So the advertisement that you see is a sample that we'll have on WCBI, the Dispatch. We've contacted the Columbus Packet and other media outlets. We'll use Facebook, we'll use Twitter, we'll do Falcon Blast periodically to just try to get people to apply so our principals will have a very good pool to choose from so we can put the very best teacher in front of our kids when we come back to school in August.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shannon. Board, another item that was uploaded to us, let's see, I think that's to us, is the educational needs. It was in resources, the instructional needs, and so would you like to speak to that, or do you want to have us review it more?
If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about it briefly. The board was gracious enough, I think in November of 2016, to let us have some money out of fund balance to address some immediate needs. We have had a chance to analyze the effectiveness of spending those dollars, and we have provided a report to the board. The summary is the last column in gold or yellow on the end. So as you're looking at that, I think it's only in board resources, not on the screen, but board members, once you have a chance to review that, we will be ready to provide answers or feedback for you in the coming meetings. But we wanted to make sure you had that information so you could see what was needed, what was used, what we found to be effective, non-effective, as we move forward with planning during this budget cycle.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Shannon. Board, next we will go to item 11.2, which is instructional technology budget update for fiscal year 19. And so, Mr. Shannon, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you, President Spears. Guys, you have before you a list that, and before I go over this list, I would like to publicly thank Mrs. Pam Lenore for helping us to come up with this list, analyze it, and give you as much information as we have. As her and I sit down throughout the days, the principals kind of make fun of us because we work in pairs, and it's just, you see one of us, see both of us. But she is the author and provider of this information, and so I thank you so much for having that information readily available for our board. But in past meetings, the board has asked us to provide an analysis of the instructional technology and subscriptions that we were being used, the effectiveness, and get some feedback from our stakeholders to make sure we weren't duplicating services or to make sure we weren't paying for things that were not being utilized. We are continually looking at that and still looking at some things that we'll bring to you in future meetings, but we have been able to identify some things that we know we just will not be able to use for one reason or another for next year. They include Bloomboard, Bright Bites, Fish Tree, Hobson, and Kirkland Group code assessments. And we did list a reason for those eliminations, and we will present those to the new superintendent or leadership once they come on board, so we can provide a reason for those not being utilized and placed in next year's budget.
All right. Thank you very much. And $166,000 is a good start. So. So thank
I
y'all very
would like to make just a footnote. Please notice the last column as to when it was last paid. Fish Tree was paid this year in FY18. Those others may have been paid in previous years, but they would, payment will be coming up in FY19, so we'll make sure not to include those numbers, those dollars in FY19. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, both of y'all and the team for working on that for the board. Board, next we have 3, discussion of spring break supervision of Juvenile Detention Center by interim superintendent. The reason this is on tonight's agenda, back June or July of last year, we had approved for Mr. Shannon to oversee, and I've spoken to Mr. Dunn about this as well, the students that we have and services that we're providing during those periods of time at the Juvenile Detention Center. And so, Mr. Dunn, if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of let you kind of pick up here.
Okay. Basically, this is a time when there's nobody available, and you can't have the school district operating something and not have anyone available, because it's, outside the time when even, principals or anyone else is on contract. I mean, they're on contract, but it's vacation. And so there's a great concern. Somebody's got to be available. And that takes away from, somebody's personal life. And so, and last May, I think it was what last time it came up, this board, voted, Mr. Shannon was willing to make himself available during his off time. And so but he was in the role at that point of deputy superintendent. And so that approval from last May is not going to suffice. He's in another role, although it's interim. As long as he's in that interim role, you're going to have to act again if you're going to authorize him to fulfill this role.
And it's my understanding that, we can authorize him to do it because when we authorize it, it's off-contract work, and so he was paid for that, and there have been some changes in his contract and everything, so it would be up to him to determine, or he may decide for the board to allow someone, he may choose someone else that could do it.
Exactly. His plate's full. If you don't want to do it, then he can assign it to somebody else.
And then that would be brought back to the board for approvals. And I know that we have spring break coming up, and so is it something that if he chose someone they were agreeable to do it, that we could approve it after it's been done, or would it need to be taken up at this?
It really needs to be taken up now.
Okay. So, Mr. Shannon, do you have a comment regarding it?
Yes, sir. Thank you, board, for your vote of confidence in this area, because it's very important, especially with everything that's going on in our community and in the nation, to make sure our teachers and students have someone to respond to during spring break time. I have talked with Mrs. Lenore. There are some days that she may be available, and it is part of the process or agreement or board approval back in May or June of last year. She was a part of that approval process also with me. So if we could work it out among ourselves, I would like to recommend that she be allowed to work on the days that I could not, and also keep in mind that we do not work when children are not present. Sometimes JDC is empty, and so we do not have to report to work on days of that nature and are not paid.
Okay. So,
You comment?
yes.
I mean, basically, if you just make the approval to be for Mr. Shannon and Ms. Lenore,
Okay.
whoever is going to be available, and let the superintendent decide who's going to work.
Okay. All right. So, board, hearing the discussion, is there any other discussion and clarifications that we need? So, board, I need a motion to approve the modification for the upcoming supervision of the Juvenile Detention Center by either Mr. Shannon or Ms. Lenore at their agreement. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
So motion by Mr. Sparks. Do I have a second? Has been seconded by Ms. Cox. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. All right. Thank you very much. Next we go, and if we could, Board, the next items, 11, 4, 5, and 6, are very similar, different items, but very similar as to their effort as far as providing activities for our students during the spring break period. So if we could take all three of those as one motion. Board, I need a motion to approve items 11, let me make sure I get it correct here, 11A, 4, 5, and 6.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Ms. Cox. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Sparks. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to item 11B, interim superintendent recommendations. We have consideration to approve staff personnel items. Board, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Sparks. I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Mr. Shannon, I think you...
Yes, sir, President Spears, other members of the board. We do have in our midst tonight a national champion, so to speak, national championship level coach. His name is Eric Rice, and he just was approved to be our next CHS head football coach. Let's give him a hand. And Mr. Rice, if you don't mind, if you'll come up to the podium as I say a little bit about you. Mr. Rice played football right here in the Golden Triangle over in Starkville. We won't hold that against him, especially since we won last night. Went on to play for Coach Cutcliffe over at Ole Miss. Very good.
Yeah.
Anyway, also coached at South Panola, the university up north for high schools. Won a 2 state championships in 2009 and 10, and was the national championship assistant coach for their football team in 2010. He comes from very good stock. He is a nephew of NFL Hall of Famer Jerry Rice. So we are looking forward to having Mr. Rice lead our football program, and he will be fishers of men and make sure our young men behave well, act right, and no pressure. We're playing for the state championship in basketball on Saturday, and we hope to play for a state championship in football sometime very soon. But one thing I'll say to you, I coached before, and I love winning. I was 49-1, 49 straight. But my biggest compliment that I've ever been given is that the men that I coached, they won in the game of life. So make sure that our young men win when it comes to the game of life. So, Coach Rice, if you'd like to say anything, we'd love to hear your comments.
First off, to the board, the superintendent, I'm definitely appreciative for this opportunity to lead your football program. Like he stated, I'm right along with him that, you know, I'm not one of those coaches that want to win at any cost. I want to win in life. I want to win in the classroom. I want to win in the hallways. I want to win on how we walk onto the field and how we go off the field, how we shake the other team's hand. Those are things that's important to me as we move forward with young men. We know the generation that we're living in, and it takes a village to raise them all. I'm all about being a great team player, so if they need some help at the elementary building, I'm willing to do that, or middle school building, or wherever it may be. Been in this community for as long as I have. My dad's a pastor here in town, and I have great admiration for everyone here in the town of Columbus, and I'm looking forward to not only serve the school, but to serve this community. Now, once again, I appreciate you for this great opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Coach Rice will be in town for a couple days. He's currently employed in a district north of us, but he will be here tomorrow to meet with the coaches that we currently have on staff. There will be a players team meeting tomorrow, and he will be meeting with several people around town. So if your time or schedule permits, he would love to sit down with anyone and discuss his philosophy and thoughts. But we are just so excited to have Mr. Rice as a part of our team. And hey, go Falcons.
Go Falcons. That's right. Well, thank you very much for that. And Board, as we turn our attention to the agenda, we go to the next item, which is the consideration to approve revised administration organizational chart. So, Board, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
It's been motioned by Mr. Sparks. I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to item 3, which is a consideration to approve CMSD summer food program sites. Board, I need a motion for approval. Has been motioned by Ms. Cox. Do I have a second? I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to our goal updates. We have student attendance report. Board, is there any questions about the student attendance report? Ms. Shannon, do you have any questions or comments about it? Okay. Next, we go to our goal update dropout report. All right, Board, is there any questions about the dropout report? Okay. Next, we'll go to C3, the school safety report and discipline reports there for the district and different campus locations. Any questions? All right. Next, we go to the teacher attendance report. Any questions? Looking good. Then we have our workers' compensation report. Board, any questions about the safety report? Okay. Then we go to item 12, Office of Instruction and Assessment. First, we will have the Columbus Middle School folks report. Ms. Billy Smith. Welcome, Ms. Smith.
Mr. President, Board of Trustees, Mr. Shannon, delighted to be here to give you the update for the month of March for our focus school. As I stated last month, I will address each one of these areas, give you an update on these each month. Our goals are listed here. They will remain the same to increase proficiency in ELA. This month I decided to add the specific numbers, the percentage on there, so that we can always go back and reference to these numbers within ELA and math. Increase the growth of all students in ELA and mathematics by 1%. Increase the growth of the bottom 25% in ELA and mathematics by 1%. And in science, our goal is to increase proficiency by 9%. As you all remember, last year we were only 2 points away. So if we increase in each one of these areas by 1%, 9% in science, we will reach our goal for the upcoming school year of improving the accountability rating from an F to at least a D. Enrollment compared to last month increased by 3 students, so very proud to that our numbers are increasing gradually. As far as leadership, we are continuing to have school leadership meetings. These school leadership meetings do not only entail myself and my assistant principal, it includes the department leaders in each content area, so we can have input from the teachers. The teachers are in the trenches every day, so we can get input from them, the challenges that they see, and they bring it to the table so that we can try our best to address them. Classroom observations and feedback is meaningful to give the teachers feedback within a timely fashion. Our ultimate goal is to give immediate feedback. We're not always able to give them that feedback at that time, but within 48 hours to give them feedback so that they can address the concerns that we have noted in the classroom, and also to give them kudos for the areas that they have improved in and so forth. Curriculum and instruction, as always, to ensure that the instruction that's being delivered to our students is aligned with the Mississippi College and Career Readiness Standards. Make sure that the instructional strategies are somewhat similar to how the assessment will be presented to them starting at the end of April. Monitoring interventions through progress monitoring. It is so exciting to see the students that we have identified for interventions, and we progress monitor them at least every 2 weeks to where we can sit down and have those conversations with them and take little chunks at a time and say, look at this, Johnny. 2 weeks ago you started here. At this point you're here. And it's just to build their self-confidence, because as Mr. Shannon stated, we have awesome students here. We just have to reach them and show them that we really, really care for them. professional development opportunities, continuing to have visits from my school improvement coach. I don't necessarily wait until she come and physically meet with me here. We have an open relationship, whether it's through email, phone calls, text message. If she see things, she'll send it to me. If I have questions, I can call her at any time, and she'll get right back with me. Benchmark data analysis and customizing goals. We are constantly reviewing our students' data, customizing their goals. Once a student reach a goal, we're not satisfied with just reaching a goal. We set an even higher goal for them so that we can expect the ultimate best for them. Review of the students' IEPs. It's ironic Mr. Wilson mentioned that there were some concerns with the IEPs. Our teachers are going through reviewing the IEPs. The administrators are making sure that we're sitting down with them if we have questions so that we're on the same page to make sure that we are providing the best education for each and every one of our students. Weekly PLC meetings is led evidence-based and based on student data. Culture and climate. We can do all the instructional things, but we have to work on the culture and climate. Just came back from a training last 2 days, Capturing Kids' Heart, and it deals with if the students don't feel as if we have their best interests at heart, we can do whatever, we can work our hinds off, but it won't improve student achievement. But to show the students that we truly care for them, the things that's going on at home, after school, and so forth. And if we show them that we care, they'll do whatever we ask of them. Positive behavior incentives. Our students love out-of-uniform days and getting input from them for the different things that they will work towards. 21st Century Community Learning Center. Mr. Adams is our project director for that, and he's somewhat like a big kid, and he creates awesome things for them. Usually on Thursday at the end of the week they have enrichment day, and I can hear the activity in my office of the different things the students they work towards going to enrichment day on Thursday. A lot of STEM, mathematics, and interventions and so forth. Living Portrait Black History activity. Unfortunately, I was not at school on that day, but had awesome pictures. The students did an awesome job of researching their different famous Black American, and the students had an opportunity to walk through, and they had to provide feedback, and it was a specific assignment that they had to answer different questions and so forth. And once I got back, it's amazing how some of the students shared some of the information that they had learned with completing that activity. Family and community engagement. Upcoming, we will solicit input on reviewing of the handbook, not only from our teachers, but from our parent stakeholders as well. We will have a spring teacher conference day coming up. We also have a leadership club to build leaders from within our school. One activity that they recently completed was on Dr. Seuss Day, Read Across America. They went over to Stokes-Beard Elementary School, and they read to pre-K through 3rd grade students over at Stokes-Beard. So, you know, they're going back, giving to the community. Our external providers, they're continually coming in, providing teacher coaching, modeling, lesson planning, and providing support for our students. New allocations. Since we are a focused school, our most recent allocation was a Title I school improvement 1003A, and the allocation amount was in the amount of $181,077. We recently completed the plan. We submitted to the State Department, and we are awaiting as to whether or not that plan will be approved or not. 9 times out of 10, they may send it back for some minor revisions, but once we get input, feedback from them, we will make those adjustments as needed.
Ms. Smith, that plan is on the board agenda for today to be approved. Is that correct, or has it? Do you want to talk a little bit about what's in that plan as to what that money will be utilized for?
Sure. Yes, sir. The majority of the plan was written for personnel so that we can provide intensive intervention. As we stated before, our students can learn to try to make sure we have a smaller student-teacher ratio. Also, there is an amount allocated for supplies, a small amount allocated for professional development. One thing that we want to try to explore is some of my teachers have asked me in the past that, Ms. Smith, what would you feel about us going out on the weekend to provide maybe like a Saturday academy or something like that? So that's something that we're wanting to try. It may not be every Saturday, but if it's one Saturday out of the month, so we can go out in the community, whether it's at Cook Elementary School on this particular Saturday, and we can provide parent meetings and different activities for the students. And the next Saturday, it may be at a different school and so forth.
Board, do you have any? Yes, Ms. Cox. If you would, yeah.
Thank you very much for what you're doing, and it appears that you have an excellent outline. But I want to ask one question when we go back to our goals. All right, when you said just the 1%, okay, was this set up at the beginning of this school year, and have you been actually, can you sort of elaborate so I can come up to par as to where you are and tracking where your students are in meeting that 1% goal? Because they could very well go over the 1%, which would be excellent.
Correct.
The 1% is like a minimum, but you want them to extend, you know.
Yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh.
Our goal was set after we received our accountability rating, and I apologize for not having the exact numbers as to where we are now. Last month when I presented, I had the exact numbers, but as a whole, I can say as far as English language arts, as far as the proficiency of all students, growth of all students in the bottom 25. After our last benchmark assessment, we were not on track at that time for meeting that 1%. So after reviewing that data, as far as identifying interventionists and different instructional strategies, we went back to the table to revamp. I have 2 ELA interventionists that have been approved tonight, and so they are scheduled to start on Monday after spring break for identified students who are not making the progress in order for us to meet that minimal 1% growth in proficiency, growth of all, and bottom 25. In December, as far as mathematics, we were on track for meeting at least that minimal 1%. Actually, in mathematics, we were on track to exceed the 1% in mathematics. Science, we were on track at the time in December, excuse me, not December, last month, based on December numbers, there were, I think I was off, if I'm not mistaken, maybe about 10%. There were about 30% at that time students who, based on the benchmark assessment, they were projected to be proficient. There were another 10 to 15% of students who were between 1 and 5 questions away from being proficient. And when we went back to look at those students who were not quite proficient, the teachers were able to inform me, Ms. Smith, they're low in content area that we haven't taught yet. So that made me feel better, so that once the teachers teach that content area and we go back to progress monitor and assess them, that those students will be able to attain those 1 to 3 additional questions in order to set them for proficiency.
How often do you progress monitor? Excuse me. How often do you do it? Every, did you say 2.5 weeks earlier? Or
No,
4 weeks?
For the students who we have identified for interventions, we progress monitor them every 2 weeks.
That's your lower 25th percentile kids, or the 20-day kids?
These are the students who are the bottom 25. They're also some of our bubble students, to where they're they are 2 or 3 questions away from the next proficiency, or they're only 2 or 3 questions above that proficiency to where they could easily drop down.
Got it.
And just to clarify, one thing, on the interventionalist schedule, there's 1, 2, and 3 levels. Is that the way that I understood it was presented before? Or is it just that they're on a bubble, and so, or they're on the bubble of where they need to be, and so there's going to be kind of pushing them, give them a little bit more support to make sure that they're proficient and getting over in those different areas?
Let me make sure I'm understanding your
Sure.
question. You're saying the students who have been identified to receive interventions?
Yes.
Gotcha. These are the students who are, the interventions are not only provided by the interventionists. The regular classroom teachers provide interventions in the classroom along with the interventionists, and with pull-out as well. We have identified our students who are in the bottom 25, also those bubble students. So it's a combination of both.
Sure, and just to clarify is that even though there are students that are in those categories that are getting that additional support, the ones who may already be proficient or are trying to go to advanced and other levels, they're still getting additional support to keep moving them as well.
Correct. In the classroom, we have our high-impact centers. It's differentiated instruction so that the teachers provide instruction in different groups. We try our very best to target those bottom 25 students and bubble students. They get that small instruction teacher FaceTime every day. The students who are on the higher end, they receive more advanced and enrichment information, instruction so that they don't slip down.
Right.
Because if we only provide them that middle level instruction, it's hard to maintain those advanced students.
Okay.
So therefore, you are utilizing the multi-tiered support system,
Yes, ma'am.
whereas you're doing your tier 1, your tier 2, and your tier 3 kids.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Shannon, do you have a comment?
And just to summarize for Mrs. Smith, because I do work very closely with Ms. Smith and Ms. Cargile at the high school, we look at our accountability model in boxes, and we know the proficiency, we know the growth of the lowest 25%. And to make my math simple, and so it won't be checked by anyone, when we look at these boxes, Mrs. Smith is saying that for ELA proficiency, she wants to improve from 14.8 to 15.8. When you see the 1%, we looked at how many points that we need to move from an F to a D. Okay, and if these boxes improve by that 1%, she would reach her goal. So if we have 1,000 students and that 15.8 was 16%, we know we need 160 students to score proficient in ELA. So what we do is go by and ask and tell our teachers, we've got 10 teachers in a certain grade level that teach ELA. We need each one of you guys to have 16 students to score proficient in ELA. Which 16 students have you identified that are proficient? And we provide those students with interventions at a higher level, okay? And it goes like that for every single box. So the teachers know exactly which students they're targeting for proficiency, which ones they're targeting for growth, which is everyone, and then growth of the lowest 25%, which pushes up your growth for all. And the kids know exactly what level they are, and they're very, very competitive. Competition drives performance most of the time. And so when they see their peers being labeled as proficient or advanced, they want to know how to get there. And the teachers have bought in, the students have bought in, and have some great leadership there. So we're not hoping, we are expecting some good results when the scores come back.
Reason why I was elaborating on that with you, middle school is the most difficult grade levels and ages to move students and to make that progressive note. Whereas it's a lot more easier in the elementary sector because you aren't from the 4th grade to the 5th grade, there's a big jump. But then when you go from the 5th to the 6th, it's even larger. That gap is larger. And then you are responsible, I'm looking at 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, right?
Correct.
And with you having that responsibility, you got a lot of, when I said the multi-tiered, I know you know exactly what I'm referring to, because the behaviors are going to do what? that behavior is going to affect what you all are trying to do over on this side. So with you actually using that multi-tiered the way that you are, and it's great that you have interventionists that are doing some one-on-one and small group with you now, I'm hoping that you'll see some successes, because it's been well needed, those interventionists. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you very much for sharing, and Ms. Smith, thank you very much for coming for us tonight. Board, is there any more questions? Thank you. Board, next we will go to our presentation 12B, Cook Elementary School at Risk Report from Mr. Brandon.
And President Spears, if you don't mind, we've asked Mr. Brandon and Mrs. Williams to come up together. Their reports are very similar.
Okay.
They'll report together.
Excellent. Welcome.
Good evening, CMSD board members, Mr. President and Mr. Superintendent. Mr. Superintendent, I understand you had a late night last night, so we'll do our best to keep our presentation short to get you home at a reasonable hour tonight. At any rate, good evening, everyone. At this time, we've come to present our initial report and updates on the status of our schools and our efforts in the school turnaround process as a requirement set forth by Mississippi Department of Education and the Office of School Improvement. I think you all should have in your packet a report titled Comprehensive Progress Report. Just to give you a little background of the origins of that report. On December the 18th, I, along with Ms. Williams, a teacher representative, a parent representative, the superintendent, Mr. Spears, yourself, if you recall, we all went down to Jackson to Mississippi Department of Education in the Office of School Improvement at that time to participate in some school at-risk interviews. At that time, we presented our initial plans for the school turnaround process in our respective schools. They accepted our presentations and indicated to us that at a later date they would return with some recommendations. On February 7th, they did return with those recommendations. Included in those recommendations was a school turnaround model with 8 school turnaround principles. These principles have been shown to be the best practices for a successful school turnaround. At this time, I'll ask Ms. Williams to outline those 8 turnaround principles.
Good evening. The 8 turnaround principles identified by MDE are as follows. Providing strong leadership, ensuring that teachers are effective and able to improve instruction, redesigning the school day, week, or year to include additional time for student learning and teacher collaboration, strengthening schools' instructional program based on student needs, and ensuring that the instructional program is research-based, rigorous, and aligned with the state academic content standards, using data to inform instruction and for continuous improvement, including providing time for collaboration on the use of data, establishing a school environment that improves school safety and discipline, and addresses other non-academic factors that impact student achievement, such as student social, emotional, and health needs, providing ongoing mechanisms for family and community engagement, and ensuring that the school receives ongoing intensive technical assistance and related support. As Mr. Brandon mentioned, these principles serve as a guide in creating our school action plan, which you have a copy of. We use these principles along with the 9 best practice indicators to assess where we were in the school turnaround process. Once we worked with our school leadership teams in assessing our levels of implementation, we then created that action plan. So far, since our meeting with MDE in December, at Franklin, we have started the following and addressed 3 of the turnaround principles. The first one that we addressed was turnaround principle number 2, which was ensuring that teachers are effective and able to improve instruction. We did that by using the MDE exemplar lessons for identified standards and identifying professional development areas of focus using the MDE menu of services. And Mr. Spears, I don't know if you recall, but that was one thing that Dr. Benton specifically addressed with us in the Franklin meeting, was using that menu of services for professional development offered from MDE, as well as those exemplar lessons. We also are addressing turnaround principle number 3, redesigning the school day, week, and year. At Franklin, we have restructured some of our class schedules to maximize instructional time and the placement of our instructional support team members. We're also addressing turnaround principle number 6 with the approval of the Leader in Me program. I think it was on last month that the board approved that. So we have already scheduled the training dates for 2 days at the end of May for all staff members at Franklin. This training will be ongoing throughout the 2018-2019 school year, and we are expecting some positive results in our school culture and climate with the implementation of Leader in Me. Again, these were prioritized based on the recommendations from our MDE interview.
As Ms. Williams has already said, we are addressing all 9 indicators. We've chosen to prioritize 3 of them. At Cook Elementary, we've addressed turnaround principle number 6, establishing a school environment that improves school safety and discipline, and addressing other non-academic factors that impact student achievement, such as the student's social, emotional, and health needs. Turnaround principle number 3, redesigning the school day, week, or year to include the additional time for student learning and teacher collaboration. We are addressing those the same at both schools. We did give priority to at Cook for turnaround principle number 5, which is using data to inform instruction, and for the continuous improvement of including and providing time for the collaboration on the use of school data. These are all our reportings at this time.
Okay. Just before I turn it over to the board for questions, now this is just as we go forward, we'll have routine updates just every month that come back in, just as we've been hearing from Ms. Smith, as we go forward with the execution of your plan and continuing to build that out. And thank you all very much for putting this together and your hard work from where we did sit down in Jackson to where we're at today, and continue the hard work to moving your school campuses forward. Board, do you have any questions regarding tonight's presentation or the reports? No, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, board, one thing as we've done in the past for the middle school is that it's required by MDE that we take up the plan that's been discussed with us tonight, and also the ongoing outline of the plan. So we have item 12D, which is consideration to approve school at risk plan for Cook Elementary. Board, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Sparks. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Cox. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to 12E, which is the consideration to approve school at risk plan for Franklin Academy. Board, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
It's been motioned by Dr. Shoemake. I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Then we have 12F, which is consideration to approve FY18 1003A School Improvement Assurances Budget and Plan for the middle school. This is the part that Ms. Smith was sharing with us of the dollars to be used. And so, board, I need a motion for approval. Has been motioned by Ms. Cox. Do I have a second? I'll make the second by Mr. Sparks. Any discussion? Okay, being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we'll go to 12G, which is the consideration to approve makeup days for CMSD. We have one, which is the consideration to approve April the 2nd as the makeup day for January the 16th, and 2, which is the consideration to approve administrative leave with pay for all applicable employees for the January 16th, 17th, 2018 due to the declared emergency closure. So, board, if we could take both these at the same time. So, board, I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
It's been motioned by Mr. Sparks. I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we have the lottery, 12H, lottery updates information. Board, is there any questions about this information? That's for information only. Is there any questions? Okay. Next, we go to 12I, updating the testing calendar. It's for information only. So board, is there any question about the CMSD testing schedule? Okay. Next, we'll go to 12J, which is consideration to approve FY18 Title V assurances, budget and plan for Columbus Municipal School District. And Mr. Shannon, before we take this up, I'll let you comment about it.
Thank you so much, President Spears, other members of the board. You do have before you our FY18 Title V assurances, budget and plan. This is the old federal program's Title VI application that we have traditionally used for after-school tutoring in our district. We have received, I think it's about $68,000 that we'll use this money again for interventions and support and tutoring, but we have had a tremendous amount of success with tutoring during the school day instead of after school. We have had a problem or issues with scheduling in the fall with our kids being involved in activities, and also in the spring, and getting those kids that really need to stay. Sometimes they don't get allowed to stay for whatever reason. So we have taken advantage this year of the opportunity to allow those students to be tutored actually during the school day, and let our teachers have their planning period after the students leave after school. So we're going to try that model again and continue that success as we move forward, and we think that we'll see some results with positive results with student achievement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shannon. Is there any questions for Mr. Shannon regarding this item? Okay. So if we could, I need a motion for approval. Has been motioned by Ms. Cox. I'll make the second. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, board, we'll go into closed determination for executive session. I need a motion to go into closed determination.
So moved.
Has been motioned by Mr. Sparks. All in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. We'll be out shortly to make our announcement. Thank you all. All right, welcome back. We went into executive session. Mr. Sparks made the motion. Dr. Shoemake made the second. It was a 4-0 vote to take up the 5 different items. The first 3 items we took up were executive session minutes. Mr. Sparks made the motion. Dr. Shoemake made the second. It was a 4-0 vote for approval of those. The second, or the fourth item we took up was potential litigation. We had discussion. There was no action taken. The fifth item was potential sale, lease of real property. We had discussion. There was no action. Then we had our return to regular session. Mr. Sparks made the motion. Dr. Shoemake made the second, and it was a 4-0 vote to return to regular session. That brings us to our next item on tonight's agenda, which is item number 16, CMSD Board of Trustees Officer Elections. And board by policy, we will take a nomination motion for the office of president. Do I have a nomination motion?
Yes, I nominate Jason Spears for president.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Has been seconded by Mr. Sparks. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to office of, by policy, Office of Vice President. Board, I need a nomination motion. I nominate Mr. Frederick Sparks for Vice President. Do I have a second? Has been seconded by Ms. Cox. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next we go to, by policy, Office of Secretary. I need a nomination motion.
I nominate Dr. Shoemake.
Okay. It has been motioned by Mr. Sparks, and will you be the second, Ms. Cox? Okay. It has been seconded by Ms. Cox. Any discussion? Being no discussion, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. Next, we go to Mr. Shannon's favorite item on the agenda. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
It's been motioned by Mr. Sparks. Do I have a second? I'll make the second.
Okay.
I'll beat you to it, so I'll take the second on that. Any discussion? Congratulations on your first meeting. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify with your right hand. It is unanimous. We are adjourned.